frankly, the British government and the establishment is so desperately thinking about China as a business partner, they fail to realise how dangerously threatening China really is becoming.
A British parliamentary researcher has been arrested on suspicion of spying for China in what the Sunday Times describes as one of the most damaging breaches of security involving a hostile state at Westminster. The paper reports the man in his late 20s worked with MPs on international policy, including relations with Beijing, for several years. Rishi Sunak has raised the issue this morning with the Chinese Prime Minister. Let's speak to Conservative MP Ian Duncan Smith.
It is a significant breach in security. It's a significant breach in security in parliamentary terms. So there are big questions to be asked about parliamentary security, about the vetting of people who work for different groups that are made up of parliamentarians. This group, I think, was a thing called the Chinese Research Group, which is basically a conservative group of MPs concerned about China, but it's not that big. I'm involved in an organisation called the Interparliamentary Alliance on China, and that's got 32 countries in it. It's a very international cross-party organisation. But it's interesting to see that there are real questions to be asked in all of this, and also it begins to seriously question the British government's change in position over China, where previously they had the Prime Minister referred to them as a systemic threat. And then we went to epoch-defining challenge and robust pragmatism and very watered down. We see the Foreign Secretary going over there begging for work. And I just think this really now does need to ask, why aren't we calling China what they are, which is a systemic threat, which many other countries do at the same time?
And what effect would that realistically have?
Well, it would force, I think, all of our agencies to recognise what they're up against and to officially then move to block the sort of penetration that we've seen from China. China are relentless in their attacks. In our organisation, the Interparliamentary Alliance on China, they attack our sites. They spend their time putting what they call wolf warriors on individuals. I've had people impersonate me all over the world, as though getting comments back from people saying that individuals have tried to persuade them that they were me and that they'd changed their opinions and things like that. That is all what they call low-level wolf warriors. But this goes on the whole time. And frankly, the British government and the establishment is so desperately thinking about China as a business partner, they fail to realise how dangerously threatening China really is becoming, with huge plans to invade Taiwan, but also committing genocide, persecution, trashing Hong Kong, arresting democracy campaign. It's time we really called them what they are.
Now, we're not identifying the person in question, of course, but in the report here in the Sunday Times, a Whitehall source says, I'm pretty sure he, the researcher that is, turned some backbenchers from China hawks into being apathetic about Beijing. Are you aware of any contact you may have had with this researcher, and it's particularly in relation to issues around China?
Well, it's very difficult to know because I don't know who this is.
Okay.
So, of course, the problem is I'd have to see a picture of him to realise whether or not. But, Parliament is a very strange place because everybody is on top of everybody the whole time. It's in and out of different rooms, in and out of different meetings. You never quite know who you're talking to. And so that's why the need, and I suspect that the Speaker will want to say something about toughening up security in Parliament, but it is too easy to get into that place as a researcher, as we've seen on other occasions, by the way.
Yeah. This Whitehall source saying he was regularly complaining about a lack of nuance among China sceptic MPs and seemed to have a particular issue with Sir Ian Duncan Smith.
Yes, well, I wouldn't be surprised at that. I've been sanctioned by the Chinese government because the organisation I'm involved in, the Interparliamentary Alliance on China, unearthed the genocide that was going on in Xinjiang, and we have been vocal critics of the appalling abuses that the Chinese government, that is to say, Xi Jinping and his Chinese Communist Party, have lashed out at people in China and outside China. So I wouldn't be at all surprised if he had been criticising me, because if he's a spy on the side of China, then that's exactly, I'll be a target for him, which I am already.
In terms, then, Ian, of the relationship, I suppose, that you envisage for the UK with China. We were speaking to Harry York, who is deputy political editor of the Sunday Times, who's one of the people who's written this piece, but has also been at the G20 this weekend, spending time, of course, with Rishi Sunak and all the other world leaders. And he was suggesting earlier that when it comes to questioning our relationship with China, Rishi Sunak says we need dialogue, we can't ignore them, but at the same time, he has raised this scandal with the Chinese PM, Premier Li Qiang, and unpretending he conveyed his significant concerns about Chinese interference with the UK's parliamentary democracy. Just piecing all that together for us, what should the relationship be if the Prime Minister's pursuing dialogue, but yet there are suggestions there is a spy literally working in the House of Commons for the Chinese regime? I don't know how you square that circle.
Well, first of all, I don't think it's a dialogue. I think it's a kind of pathetic monologue. What's actually going on is China is ignoring much of what we say to them. I bet you anything that the Prime Minister, the Chinese Prime Minister he spoke to, will just deny it and say nothing happened. That's what they do all the time. And the other thing is, there was a very good piece written in the Times about a day or two ago by Juliet Samuel, in which she said this idea that somehow Britain is involved in some incredibly balanced dialogue is utter nonsense. It's not a balanced dialogue. It's a one-way attempt to try and look and behave as though we are kind of friendly to China. And the trouble with that is China doesn't give a damn. The reality for them is they have a course they are set on, and they're going to achieve it. And so far, they've done everything they said they would do. The abuses internally are about cracking down on dissident groups, but also cracking down on people who they don't describe as Han Chinese. In other words, they are of ethnicity that is different from Han Chinese. They want to eradicate them. All that stuff goes on. So if we say a dialogue, I ask, how far has that dialogue gone? And countries like America have a very different position. They are very open about their deep concerns and criticisms of China. They don't say that they are a epoch-defining threat, challenge. They call them a threat. And therefore, when you speak to China, you should speak on strength, not this kind of what I consider to be slightly weak position where we say we gave them a tough time privately, but we're actual fact desperately trying to get jobs. The key thing is many businesses are beginning to move out of China into India. iPhones are moving to India, all these other places. So Britain's got to recognise China is a threat, and it's time we started doing something about it.
Yeah. So as we wake up and we report this exclusive on the front page of the Sunday Times, how confident can you be that China isn't operating more spies at the heart of Parliament? How big a breach do you consider this to be?
I have zero confidence that they are doing any other than just as you've described. In other words, China has almost certainly got other people that are involved in all our institutions, by the way. I think we are deeply penetrated by the Chinese because of our ambivalent attitude towards them. Therefore, people tend to turn a blind eye. People like me get criticized because we make too much of this, and then you see this happening. If you can penetrate Parliament like this over such a long period of time and act abusively as this individual clearly has done in breach of security, then how many other institutions with less levels of security are being penetrated on a daily basis? Even looking around newspapers and others, you just wonder how many people are now in those areas. It's not an absolute allegation. I'm just simply saying China is determined to undermine the UK because we in the past were critical. They want to undermine the Five Eyes, which is Canada, America, Australia, New Zealand, and ourselves, and they want to undermine NATO desperately. And they are absolutely fearful and furious with America. So any allies of that will be penetrated.